Well, hello there, Emmanuel Church, London. It's great to see you all, and welcome to our special guest, Natalie Williams. Hi, Natalie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm all right, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Not too bad. We're looking this week at the subject of justice, and you're going to help us a little bit with that. But before we get into that, I just wanted to, I suppose, just introduce you to the church, because a lot of people won't know who you are. Some will know, and I know you've got some really good friends in Emmanuel Church, London. So just tell us a little bit about who you are, where are you, what are you doing, what's work looking like at the moment?
I'm Natalie. I live in Hastings on the southeast coast. I grew up here in relative poverty, which is relevant to, I guess, what we're going to come on to talk about. But became a Christian in Hastings when I was 15. Moved away, have ended up back here. You know, one of those things where I said I never would, said I'd never work for a church. I've been working for King's Church in Hastings for 9 years. And I also work for Jubilee Plus, which is a Christian charity that equips churches like yours, like mine, to engage with the poorest and the most vulnerable in our communities and hopefully actually see people lifted out of poverty.
It's awesome. One of the things that you just left out there was that you're also an author, but we're going to get to that later because you're on your third book, and we're going to hear a little bit about your book later on, A Call to Act, which really excited that that's out and available, and looking forward to hearing it. You and I, in terms of our own journey, Natalie, where did we meet?
We met, I think, about 9 years ago when I started working for the church on a leadership training course in Eastbourne. I probably caused a bit of trouble, asked a lot of questions and irritated other people on it by doing that, but had a lot of fun myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I enjoyed all your questions. It's genuinely so good to have journeyed a little bit and just seeing everything that you've been able to do. And as I say, we're on the subject of justice today, and I know for us we really quickly got to a place where we wanted to talk to you a bit. So just help us, first of all, in terms of the subject of justice is massive. When I use that word, what does it mean to you, both personally and through the eyes of Scripture? Just tell us a little bit about how you receive the word justice.
I think in terms of the Bible, it's about putting things right, and it's about the dignity and equality of human beings, that we're all made in the image of God, and therefore how we treat each other is supposed to honour that, is supposed to reflect that. You know, obviously sin has caused breakdown, and now there are people who are oppressed. Life is unfair. We treat each other with unfairness, and so justice for me is this biblical concept of bringing back what we were created to be like. You know, we've all got areas of our life where we feel like we've been wronged, but one of the things I love about the gospel is that it promises we will get justice at the end, where there's going to be a glorious day where every wrong is put right and where everyone is seen as they should be seen. Yeah. So that's quite a big nutshell.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So where is it then in our context here in England? What are some of the things that you would see that is just gone wrong? What is it that we're sort of faced with in terms of the injustice?
You know, we're obviously in this coronavirus pandemic, and the fact that its impact is most acutely felt on the poorest, on ethnic minorities. One of the things that really struck me at the beginning of all this is people kept talking about, well, it's the great leveller, that even the Prime Minister, you know, at the minute Donald Trump's got it, no one can escape, so it's bringing us all to the same level. But for me, I'm like, there's an element to which that's true, that it can affect any of us, but actually your chances of catching it, of dying from it, are higher if you are in certain groups and certain brackets, and that's not right. There are inequalities that are being kind of exacerbated or made worse by this season that we're in. So there's that. I mean, obviously the issue of racism, I think that's a huge area where there's been a miscarriage of justice for hundreds of years and it's still not put right. We can be blind to so many of those injustices when actually they're all around us. We can see them day in, day out if we've only got eyes to see them. Yeah.
What are some of the ways that the church can respond to that, maybe through your own experience, but also just generally, what would be some of the advice that you'd be giving to churches across the board at the moment?
Yeah, well, I think as churches, when we do open our eyes to it, we see this huge picture of injustice and we think, well, we can't possibly do anything. How would we even make a difference? So I think for me, it is about starting small. And I often love to tell the story of one particular woman in my church who felt God put on her heart modern slavery and human trafficking. I mean, it's probably one of the greatest injustices where people can be sold for forced labour or sex or forced organ donation or domestic servitude, any of these things. And she felt God speak to her about it. She didn't know what to do with that, but just gathered a group to start praying. And actually, over the last 10 years, that's gone from 3 people praying monthly to my whole church. Actually, we've trained over 400 police officers, local authority staff, fire staff, all sorts of people to know how to spot the signs of modern slavery and human trafficking. And then we've trained over 100 of them to train their own organisations to like train the trainers kind of thing, you know, so they then cascade it to many, maybe even thousands of people. And that was one woman's kind of heart for justice in one area that she was just faithful with and walked with and brought to the church leadership, but no one really knew what to do with it. But she just held on to it, kept pursuing it. And now she personally supports about a dozen survivors of modern slavery and is trying to help them rebuild their lives. She's got a team, but you know, that's her role. So it's a church ministry, but obviously founded on the calling and the heart of individual, one member who then gathered people around her. Likewise though, we run as my church TLG education mentoring, and people don't necessarily see that as an issue of justice, but I do, because those kids at risk of exclusion, we're talking about 7 or 8 year olds who are at risk of exclusion. The reasons they're at risk of exclusion are because they've not been given the best start in life, because the odds have been stacked against them. And actually, if they end up getting excluded from school, their chances of going to prison are massively higher than those who stay in education. So that is a justice issue, because it's about reversing some of the odds being stacked against those kids. And again, it's just, we've just got, I think, about 9 or 10 people in the church who give an hour a week. Each one mentors a specific child. And so far, we've seen all those kids kept in school. None of them have been excluded. So I think as churches, it is about running with what's on people's hearts, just giving a little bit of freedom, a little bit of encouraging people to gather maybe a small team. We always say, if you can gather 6 people, including yourself, then we'll give it a shot.
Yeah, a group that getting to it in prayer like that's a powerful thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you just share a little bit about your own personal story and just help us understand a bit of that and maybe what you've learned more recently in terms of the subject of money, generosity, and this subject of justice?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I grew up in a council flat on the 16th floor, no central heating, one phone between every flat, the phone at the very bottom, so you had to go all the way down if you wanted to use the phone. Had free school meals, all that sort of stuff. Went to the roughest schools in my area just because they were the ones nearest. Became a Christian at 15, but honestly it was when I became a Christian that's when I realised that I was in poverty, because I got saved into a church where most people, their life experiences were just really different to mine, and I suddenly was aware that I didn't fit in. You know, I often talk, you've heard me say it before, about I'd never seen food served with meat in one dish and vegetables in another, and I literally had no idea what you were supposed to do with that. So there was a real culture clash when I became a Christian. So I'll give you an example of where this hit home for me fairly recently. Was someone in my church just started telling me about this credit card debt they were in, and they were really struggling with it. And as they started telling me about it, I was thinking, I better pray for them. And I felt God just very clearly say to me, no, you need to lend them the money. And I was like, no way. In my head, this is happening between me and God when I'm still talking to this person face to face, and I'm just like, I don't want to. And then I made the mistake of asking her, how much money is the debt? And you know, you love those stories when someone needs an exact amount of money and it comes through the door and is given to them. That never happens to me. This happened in reverse. The amount of money she needed was almost exactly what I had in the bank.
Wow.
But I was saying to God, my boiler's back, my car's not that reliable. I need to be a responsible adult, God. You can't ask me to do this. I obviously lost the argument with God eventually, but not through lack of trying on my part to persuade him that it wasn't a good idea. And I said to this woman in the church, well, how about I lend you the money interest free and you can pay me back at your own terms, your own rate? And of course I'm thinking, what if she never pays me back? And ultimately I felt God say, yeah, but it's not your money though, is it? And that's like a stab in the heart, because how do you argue with that? And so when I said to her, like, I'll lend you the money, she basically broke down in tears and was like, I haven't told anyone about this debt because I thought Christians weren't in debt. I thought I was the only person. I've been so ashamed of this debt I've been living in. And she said, I basically have felt like I can't come to God with it until I've sorted it out. And it's been a barrier in my relationship with God. And she said the fact that the first person I've told has responded kindly has made me realise that God wants my freedom and that God is for me. And I just was like, wow, I could have wrecked what God wanted to communicate to her just by my disobedience. I could have held on to my money and said, you can't have it. And actually God wanted to do something profound in her heart about his heart for her. But again, she's one of these people who you look at the whole sweep of her life and the odds are stacked against her. So it's actually an act of justice for me to say that actually what's mine for a season can be yours. And that I don't see it as my own, I see it as God's, and if he tells me to do this with it, then I need to do it.
And this is just what I love. I'm reading recently about the year of Jubilee and you know, slaves being set free, and when you really get down to it in terms of the nature of God towards us, we do forget where we once were in terms of the debt that we owe, and it's full of our own mistakes and our own rebellion and our own choices, and some of it maybe is accidental, but a lot of it isn't. And how does he deal with us? And I just think that's a beautiful story of how God just wants to reveal his nature through you to somebody else. Is awesome. Well done for being obedient as well. Wow. That's awesome.
Well, you should have heard the whole argument God and I had about it all first. But you know,
tell us more then, just in terms of I mean, that's awesome, and I love your heart. Tell us a bit about more recently. I know you've just been sort of saying there's very much a personal journey. You've been learning more and more about justice and just who God is, and just ways that practically, really practically, anybody tuning in right now might not be sat down with somebody in that situation or the ability to change someone's situation, but what can we do very practically? What are some of the things as a church listening in right now? What would you want to say to us that we could do individually?
Well, I think for me, God's been speaking to me loads during this coronavirus season, because when it started out, I was very conscious, well, I live on my own, so I'm probably now going to spend a lot of time on my own. I lost a fifth of my income and was obviously worried about that. Thought, oh, my mental health's going to struggle because I've got a history of depression as well. So there's all sorts of things I was really, really worried about. And God very quickly spoke to me about this being a season to push in, not to shrink back. And even with the whole panic buying thing, we can take on that spirit around us of I need to make sure I'm okay, or as Christians we can press into the I need to make sure my neighbour is okay. If ever there was a season to genuinely love your neighbour, as in your literal neighbour, then this is it. One of the ways we bring justice is by actually caring for those no one else cares about. There are people around you may have never spoken before, but you've got an opportunity now to find out their names and ask, what can I do for you? How can I serve you during this season? I mean, that's very Christian language, but what can I do to do you good and to be actively looking out? And so God's spoken to me about my own generosity, that actually even as I lost part of my income, that God wanted me to give more away, that God wanted me not to have an attitude of hoarding, whether that's about money or toilet roll or food or possessions, but my attitude is to be about pushing into generosity. I think God's pushed me on my own sense of compassion for people, and am I actively cultivating that in my own life? Am I growing in it? Because it doesn't happen just by accident. We don't just become more compassionate. We need to take time to hear people's stories. And I've been really busy during this season because of the nature of my job for the church, being around social action, and that's all grown during this time and been harder. So have I got the time to sit down and just listen to someone's story? Because actually that 15 minutes might inconvenience me slightly, but it might mean the world to the person who actually gets listened to and heard for the first time, maybe. If you've got more time, then please do use it for the good of others, because that will glorify Jesus. So I think who we're praying for, who we're giving to, where we're investing our time, all of these are things we should be stepping up during this season, not withdrawing. A lot around us will withdraw, but we're the church, so we need to step up.
I think what, just listening to you, which I think is awesome, is deliberately taking an attitude to take eyes off yourself, eyes to God, and then through that it's eyes to others. And I just think it's great to hear, and it's really helpful to understand as individuals we actually do a lot. It's not always just waiting for the next ministry to start or a project to start, that actually there is a lot to be gained just by taking that attitude ourselves. Natalie, to finish up, tell us a little bit about your book. You've got it there next to you, I think, haven't you? Give us a little wave. That's great. Tell us a little bit more. Is it available and where can we buy it?
Yeah. So it came out on the 1st of September. It was actually supposed to come out months ago, but it got delayed because of the pandemic, which was great because it meant we could add in a chapter about coronavirus and then thread coronavirus through. So actually it already felt like a timely book, but now it feels even more timely. And essentially it's about how you as an individual Christian can build a whole lifestyle that tackles poverty. So it's full of practical stuff on an individual basis about how you can deal with your money, even like your shopping habits, your day-to-day life, your household, your meal table, how can you use everything you've got for the glory of God, but obviously to actually lift people out of poverty? And it's really practical. And people are saying about it, it's an easy read, but it's not easy to read because it pushes you and provokes. And obviously we've done that intentionally. I've written it with Martin Charlesworth, and I've been hugely provoked by his chapters. To be honest, I've been provoked by my own chapters. You know, you just feel God asking for more of you as you step out in this area. But yeah, it's available online, St Andrew's bookshop, other Christian bookshops, all the usual places you'd think to find a book. You can find it online. It's called A Call to Act by Martin Charlesworth and me. Starts out really simply and then grows and grows into how your life can make a difference.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. I presume that I get like a little cheeky copy sent to me at some point, but I'm still waiting.
Yeah. If you send me some money, I'll get a cheeky copy sent to you, Ben.
Only if you sign it will I send you the money. Natalie, we so appreciate you here at Emmanuel Church London and just all you're doing, both in your own life through the church with Jubilee Plus. So thank you for taking the time to chat, and keep up the good work. It's awesome, and we're learning loads from you, and it's a real blessing. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
All right, see you soon.
See ya. Bye.